New rumors about Mendeecees and Yandy's relationship cause marriage to blow up and blogs to burn, causing fans to wonder if the romance they once cheered for is still alive. Timelines were overflowing with screenshots, videos, and vehement discussion. Every post adds a new dimension to a scenario that viewers believe to be complex already. It has been reported that an emotional admission made at a. Some claim that their marriage has been rocked by a private discussion, while others maintain that the conflict has been simmering for months behind the scenes. There has been no confirmation. Nevertheless, the topic is all over, and the rumors alone have rocked the hip-hop and romance scene. One widely shared video that people can't stop watching shows Mendeecees sitting motionless and gazing out over the lake as though attempting to digest a sentiment too deep to express aloud. Fans started analyzing every pause, sigh, and subsequent word as soon as the camera lingered on his face. When he did speak, it was in a calm tone, but there was no mistaking the weight of his words. He did not yell. He remained calm. However, the manner he questioned the true meaning of emotional loyalty led some to comment that this may be the most vulnerable he has ever shown. Emotions were running high, and the couple may be going through its most trying time ever, according to the comments that poured in within minutes. Yandy's name began to trend for an entirely other reason in the meanwhile. Rationale. Rumor has it that she talked candidly about developing a close bond with someone outside of the partnership, characterizing it as something that carried emotional intensity but never crossed physical bounds. Just that difference sparked an online discussion about whether emotional TIs might be just as painful as physical ones. Not just the prospect of this revelation shocks fans, but by the way, it seems to have impacted Mans, who is frequently depicted as the more reserved partner. Viewers are attempting to determine who is more in pain and who is prepared to fight for the relationship when the story appears to have abruptly changed. It has been stated that cast members, friends, and even distant acquaintances have provided feedback. Some asked for pardon, while others cautioned that the family was split throughout these talks, at least based on the blogs, with one side stressing growth and the other concentrating on pride and boundaries. Once trust is damaged, it is hard to restore. Each post adds a new twist, making it more difficult to distinguish between rumors and facts. And it's just this uncertainty that has kept everyone on guard, anticipating the next news, and constantly scrolling their feeds. The question that is currently in the air is straightforward, yet emotionally charged. Will this be another storm that passes? Or will Mendeecees and Yandy's lives alter forever at this point? With emotions revealed, allegiance called into question, and the internet scrutinizing every word, the narrative is far from over. And the tension has only started to build. The idea that something more profound was happening behind closed doors was continuously promoted by the blogs. Furthermore, anyone watching the broadcast could feel the suspense, even though nothing had been confirmed. Mendeecees is shown in the first shot sitting next to a serene body of water. Thoughts become louder, not softer, in this sort of peaceful area. He says that physical presence is meaningless if the mind is elsewhere, and he speaks slowly and deliberately. Just that line caused people to again watch the video in an attempt to understand his true meaning. Fans are stunned that he isn't making a straight accusation or raising his voice, but the agony is evident in his gaze seems to be resting on his chest as he looks down in between statements. He talks to his friend in a way that feels more like a confession than gossip. An additional element of emotion is added when he acknowledges that he heard things in private before the bloggers ever wrote anything. Learning something in private, he claims, hurts differently since there isn't a performance or an audience. The truth of what was stated. His friend tries to reassure him by pointing out that relationships go through stages and that individuals make mistakes. However, Mendeecees often returns to the same question, namely, how strong an emotional bond must be before it alters the definition of loyalty. That inquiry becomes the focal point of the entire conversation, and despite the subdued tone, emotions were running high at that point. Yandy reportedly said that the relationship never transcended physical borders, which caused a lot of controversy among fans, according to the claims that are currently circulating. According to some viewers, emotional TIs can be as strong. Others contend that forgiveness is still possible even in cases where there has been no physical betrayal. The family was split up in those internet conversations, with some arguing that Yandy's honesty is admirable and others stating that honesty does not make the hurt go away. The issue seemed more expansive than the real scene back in the program because each reaction video, comment thread, and summary offered another viewpoint. Instead of speaking loudly or aggressively, Mendeecees discusses pride as something that complicates forgiving. The fact that he acknowledges his prior failures startled many observers because it demonstrates self-awareness. He claims that it is more difficult for him to choose how to respond now because of his own past. Should he stick onto the past and insist on perfection, or should he come to terms with the fact that relationships and people change? That inward fans are astounded by his seeming vulnerability as conflict emerges in the silences between his statements. One of the most talked about conversations results from his friend bringing up the idea that love sometimes necessitates embracing things that are uncomfortable. Acceptance, according to Mendeecees, is not the same as understanding. And he claims that even when he makes an effort to move on, the thought of someone having an emotional attachment to someone else continues coming back to him. His description gives the impression that he is attempting to comprehend a language he never intended to learn, rather than being angry. The blogs also mention the widely shared images from Greece, which, despite the lack of verified information, have come to represent the whole scenario. The rapid dissemination of those photos and their use as proof in discussions that none of the parties have completely addressed have astonished fans. It became impossible for any party to speak without fear of condemnation, as the rumors became stories, which in turn became presumptions. According to the reports, Yandy single quotations as a point of view center on the notion that emotional bonds might form unintentionally. She supposedly characterizes it as a vulnerable moment that developed into something more profound before she understood the potential consequences. Viewers' responses to that explanation were divided. Some thought it demonstrated honesty and progress, while others thought it was an excuse. Those emotions also left the family split, with friends on both sides giving conflicting counsel that only made matters worse. The apparent calmness of both of them is one of the story's most striking elements. There are talks that feel heavy with unsaid words instead of loud disagreements or dramatic departures. Admirers are startled because conflict on reality TV is typically depicted by high voices and obvious stress. The internal nature of the fight, however, gives it a more authentic sense. Each sentence sounds as though it had been practiced in their brains for a long time before being uttered. The episode also emphasizes the impact of public scrutiny on personal relationships. Seeing others talk about his marriage online, Mendeecees says, makes it more difficult for him to handle his own emotions. He claims that a personal matter becomes a spectacle when strangers begin to take sides. Viewers who had faced such demands found resonance in that line, which also gave the plot extra emotional depth. In an attempt to change the topic of conversation, friends who show up in the scenario recommend therapy, time away, and family time. The underlying tension persists despite the soundness of those proposals, since neither of them appears prepared to fully commit to one course. The actual conflict arises not from the purported emotional bond, but from the ambiguity. Supporters are astounded by how it's understandable how unsettled people feel, as many claim that it's frequently more difficult to make a clear decision than to know what to do. Mendeecees acknowledges as the discussion goes on that forgiveness necessitates trust, and trust necessitates clarity to things he believes he lacks at the moment. He claims that he does not wish to act in a furious manner. However, in order to preserve the appearance of a flawless partnership, he also does not want to disregard his own emotions. That phrase turns into one of the most frequently cited quotes from the show, with fans arguing over whether it represents a positive development or a growing gap between them. He looks back at the lake at the end of the picture, which is the same serene spot where he began, but his expression has changed. He is still unsure, but it also seems like he is attempting to comprehend rather than respond. Supporters are astounded at the amount of emotion expressed without a single loud voice. And right away, the blog started making assumptions about what this might portend for the marriage's future. Because the answer depends on decisions that have not yet been made, rather than because there is no answer at all, the story stays unresolved. And that ambiguity puts everyone on guard, anticipating, and attempting to understand every single word that has been put forth. As far as the audience was concerned, the conversation did not conclude at the lake. After the show aired, comment sections, live streams, and reaction videos became a second stage where the story continued to develop. Fans are astounded by the variety of interpretations that emerged from the same intimate exchange. Others thought they were witnessing someone gradually realizing that trust had been damaged in a way that was difficult to mend, while others claimed to have seen a man attempting to heal. This difference in viewpoint reflected the division among those close to the marriage, with some supportive patients and others, as the blogs explained. Note that the sound of unresolved emotions only gets louder with time. Rumor has it that Yandy had private chats off camera in which she attempted to clarify that an emotional connection does not always imply a lack of affection for her partner. During a stressful time, she reportedly characterized it as a moment of feeling heard. Initially a straightforward friendship, it progressively gained deeper significance. Fans debated whether emotional intimacy outside of a relationship exceeds a line even in the absence of physical engagement. As a result of this reasoning, those conversations were emotionally charged, with many viewers extrapolating their personal experiences onto the events. In subsequent sequences, friends act as mediators, implying that both of them are speaking out of hurt rather than from a place of comprehension. One friend notes that Yandy appears to be discussing vulnerability while Mans is concentrating on the concept of loyalty, and those two viewpoints do not readily coincide. This observation becomes one of the most talked about moments because it frames the conflict as a difference in emotional language rather than a straightforward right or wrong. The way that one comment shifted the conversation's focus from placing blame to encouraging communication has stunned fans. But Mendeecees keep coming back to the same issue. He claims that even if there was no physical contact, he would still doubt his place in the partnership if he thought someone else was offering him emotional support during a trying moment. The fact that he questions out loud if he was absent without noticing adds even more intricacy. Though spectators are not accustomed to seeing him exhibit insecurity, that moment demonstrates self-reflection. As soon as the blogs noticed that vulnerability, they used it to create headlines about pride, responsibility, and the pressure from the public. In her alleged response, Yandy emphasizes that she still believes the marriage is worth preserving and that she never meant to cause distance. She claims that disclosing the emotional bond openly was intended to stop the development of secrets into something worse. Responses to that viewpoint are divided. Some viewers applaud the transparency, while others argue that being honest after the fact does not lessen its impact. During those talks, the family was split, with some members recommending caution and others calling for reconciliation. One more turn in the way historical events are discussed gives rise to narrative. When Mendeecees admits his own previous transgressions and asks whether it would be hypocritical to maintain his pride in the present, fans are taken aback, because it demonstrates that he is addressing the matter from a point of bewilderment rather than superiority. That acknowledgement lends emotional weight. According to him, being aware having previously been forgiven makes the choice even more challenging, since it compels him to face the true meaning of forgiveness. Additionally, the episode emphasizes how private decisions are influenced by public opinion. They both express in separate ways how difficult it is to concentrate on their own emotions due to the incessant criticism from others. When every discussion, every delay turns into a meme and becomes a headline, there is more pressure to react in a particular manner. Fans are astonished at how realistic that pressure seems, particularly for couples who have argued in front of a crowd. In a subsequent scene, although they are in the same room, there is a distinctly wary air about the scene. There are simply thoughtful statements and lengthy pauses instead of screaming voices. As Yandy talks on development and the value of communication, Mendeecees listens without interjecting. The audience is left wondering what each of them is thinking but not expressing, which heightens the tension more than an argument would. Following that scene, viewers' emotions were running high in the comment sections as they examined their body language, tone, and even distance from one another. Space could either heal or deepen the rift, as suggested by another friend who says that time apart might help them seek clarity. Some viewers claim that distance gives perspective, while others contend that it can cause more separation, making that notion another topic of discussion on the internet. For the couple and everyone else watching, the uncertainty becomes the main topic. Both of them stress the value of family as the plot progresses, raising emotional stakes that go beyond the relationship itself. They discuss how their choices impact those who depend on them for stability in addition to themselves. Because of that added burden of duty, every decision feels more difficult, and fans are astounded by how, even in situations where tension is obviously evident, that obligation appears to affect their desire to avoid conflict. According to the blogs, the way they respond to this moment could determine how their marriage develops in the future. That framing gives every topic an air of importance, regardless of whether it is true or overblown. The story continues even when no new information is disclosed, since viewers are left to try to decipher minor details as indications of either reconciliation or separation. Mendeecees reiterates her acceptance-related points toward the close of the show, stating that academic comprehension does not equate to emotional readiness for coping. Because it encapsulates the divide between feeling and reasoning, it becomes one of the most frequently quoted sentences. Fans are astounded by how candidly he conveys that conflict, and it becomes a central topic of conversation about what forgiving truly entails. As the scene comes to an end, they both admit that they are still open to talking, even though they are not yet on the same page. Although the comment changes the tone from confrontation to possibilities, it does not offer closure. The reason the story isn't finished isn't because it lacks a path. Rather, it's because that direction depends on unfinished talks. This ambiguity keeps the viewer interested, looking for clues, deciphering every word, and anticipating whether this is the start of mending or the time when it will be too impossible to overcome the gap. Tension increases even further. Seen in the way, they both begin to carefully consider their word choice whenever they are in the same room. Viewers see that talks that used to sound natural now sound calculated, as though each sentence is being examined before being said. The way that long pauses take the place of the light-hearted exchanges that formerly defined their dynamic and silence starts to have greater meaning than language astounds fans. Although neither of them has made any firm promises about the future, the blogs say this change in tone is being read as an indication that the emotional burden of the situation has not yet been lifted. The idea that trust cannot be easily regained by reassurance is brought up in one scenario that soon became a talking point. They sit across from one another, with a perceptible distance between them. Mendeecees asserts that consistency fosters trust and that once uncertainty arises, the image, every action becomes apparent as requiring evaluation. Because it represents a reality that goes beyond the show, that acknowledgement strikes a chord with many people. In the comment sections, people express their personal experiences of how hard it is to distinguish between previous harm and present intentions, causing strong emotions. In response, Yandy highlights that she is committed to putting in the effort required to restore what has been damaged. She does, however, also note that both parties must be involved in the reconstruction process. According to reports, she refers to the procedure as a partnership instead of a test, claiming that concentrating solely on the issues hinders progress. The disagreement is framed as a difference in approach rather than a difference in commitment, which gives the storyline another level of complexity. The family's responses were left ambiguous, with some members favoring the notion of teamwork and others holding that responsibility ought to come first. When friends start talking about how private feelings might be influenced by public tales, another twist appears. The same event being rehashed online over and over again might make it seem more dramatic than it is, according to one buddy, whom starts a discussion about reality versus perception. Because it implies that the strain of being observed may be exacerbating emotions that would have otherwise been processed more discreetly, fans are startled by how that observation alters the tone. However, the bloggers keep portraying the issue as a significant turning point, which gives every contact more intensity. When Mendeecees discusses pride again, he does so as something he is attempting to comprehend rather than something he is protecting. He claims that while pride can keep you from getting harmed again, it can also keep you from becoming better.